Well, joining me today, Mike Kai. Mike, so great to have you here for that really the first time and meeting you here on See Hear Love. So welcome.
Melinda, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here all the way from Hawaii to Canada. I'm sure there's a connection somewhere.
And if not, there will be. Maybe there'll be a See Hear Love Mike Hawaii one day. I've
Yep.
only been to Hawaii once when I was a young girl, 16 years old. My parents were missionaries in the Philippines, and we were coming back into Canada for a furlough. And we stopped and stayed in Honolulu, the Rainbow Hotel, the famous right? Is it the Rainbow
That's the
Hotel?
Sheraton. Yeah.
Sheridan?
No, that's the Hilton. That's the Hilton Hawaiian
That's it?
Village.
Okay. Yeah, so that's where we stayed. Really great memories of my time there. But I haven't been back since. So it was just a few years ago. But I
Well,
need to
you
go
gotta
back.
come back. You need to come
Okay.
back. And here's the connection.
Okay.
My family's from the Philippines. My one set of grandparents is from Ilocos Sur, and another set of grandparents are from Cebu.
Yeah.
And so years ago, I reconnected after going there. I spent the whole month in the Philippines when I was a kid and absolutely loved it. And so about 8 years ago, we planted a church in Metro Manila called
Oh,
Inspire Metro Manila. So we were going back pre-pandemic twice a year to the Philippines. I love it. It's in my heart.
wow. That's amazing. I love when people love the Philippines. I mean, I grew up there, then Singapore, and then I came to
Wow.
Canada when I was a teenager. So that's amazing. So we did know there was a connection.
Yep.
Uh, so I want to know a little bit more about you. I know our viewers and listeners might want to know about you because you have quite the story before you kind of ended up in this place of leadership and conferences and books. I always love to know kind of where you began before you got to this stage in your life. So
Mm.
why don't you bring us back as a young boy, your life, single dad, and let's go with that. And then I want to talk about you finding Jesus. But yeah, let's start from the
Yeah.
beginning.
Well, it goes all the way back to a small town in Hawaii called Honoka'a on the Big Island. So we have 8 major islands in Hawaii, and I grew up on the biggest island with one of the smallest populations. Um, Small town. Mom was a homemaker until the kids started eating more and hit adolescence. I have two brothers and a sister. I'm the middle child, classic middle child, because my brother was older. He got all the brand new clothes. I got his hand-me-downs. After me's a sister, so she got everything brand new. Then I got a baby brother, and the fashion was gone because he was 4 years younger than me. So classic overachiever, small, short at the time,
Hmm.
and great childhood though. My mom and dad were awesome, and I'm grateful for them.
Hmm.
They brought us up in the church, not the kind of church that I lead today, but I'm grateful for my religious heritage that mom and dad instilled in us as little children. And so I was played all four sports. Liked a lot of girls. The girls didn't really like me back then because I was I was a little short. Um, and coulda, shoulda, woulda. That's the story of my life. I graduate from high school, Melinda, in the late '80s, and I'm gonna leave it there,
Okay.
mid to late '80s, and probably the best era of music of all time, I must say. And I left. I left for the big city to go to the University of Hawaii, and so I go from a graduating class of 110 people
Hmm.
to a college class with 2,000 people in an auditorium, and I am absolutely lost. I don't know the streets. These look like my people, but I'm not feeling like they're my people. I feel like an
Hmm.
outsider from the sticks. And then I end up playing basketball every single day. I'm in the Air Force ROTC program because that was my ultimate goal, was to go into the Air Force. Um, and so, but I wasn't real studious. I wasn't real serious. I did just enough to get by, and then I fell in love. First girlfriend, hit it hard, and didn't know how to handle that very, very well. Um, of course, there's no God in my life at that time,
Hmm.
and I'm doing my own thing, and then so all of a sudden, of course, not that doesn't just happen, but I find out that I'm going to be a young father, and so now at the age of 19, hit upside the 2x4 of reality. I have to tell my parents, and my mom is just devastated, devastated because she had greater goals for her son. Then to all of a sudden, his life be the way that it's going to be. She knew that all of a sudden it's going to be the hardest path that you picked, and this is the road. So I quit school right away at the university in my sophomore year
Wow.
of college. Um,
Wow.
you know, cue Kenny Chesney's There Goes My Everything," right? And that was a soundtrack, if that was a soundtrack at the time.
Mm,
But you know what is a silver lining? Even though it became the hardest days of my life at that moment, from finding out that you're going to be a father, then 9 months later that you actually bring a little baby into this world. Her name is Courtney, and
mhm,
her mother and I did the best that we could. And I quit school. I went to work at a Pizza Hut and a Shell gas station. Nothing wrong with those two jobs, but two part-time jobs make barely one full-time job. And by then I'm going, is this where my life is? Is this all that there is? She and I, it was difficult. Let's put it that
mhm.
way. And I was
I
difficult,
bet.
and it was a complicated situation. I was a young man that lost his purpose, lost his goals, lost his dreams. But the reality is, I have this 2-year-old girl that I have to take care of. And so at the age of 19, we get married because I knew that that was the right thing to do.
Mhm,
There's no God in our relationship. She got her baggage, I got mine.
mhm.
This is the early 90s, and now we don't even know how to make this thing work. We're not calling the right people for help. We're seeking the wrong counsel, and then we're separated. But at the age of 21, I'm now a single father, raising Courtney by myself, and so she went in her opposite direction. It
Mhm.
was in that time, though, that I'm jumping from one job to the next. Oh, yeah, I make $10 more in tips at that place, and so I jumped there. $20 more tips in that place, that restaurant. I jumped there, and then finally, my friends at this one historic restaurant called the Willows, they took me under their wing and they said, "Mike, read this book. Hey, Mike, read this. And hey, would you want to come to church?" And I didn't want to go to church because that was the last thing that I wanted to do, because I didn't know what I needed. I just knew that I needed help. And so they would say, "Come to my church," and bug me to the point of like, get off my back. You know what I mean? Like, leave me alone. And
Yeah.
they could see my life just going down. They saw that I was
Mm.
angry. They saw that Melinda, at that time, I say that I was probably homicidal and probably suicidal. And
Really?
so, yeah, yeah,
Wow.
it was that
It's
deep at
dark.
that time of my life. It was a dark time. And they saw it. They knew that Jesus was the answer. They knew that if they could get me to the church. And so they started telling me, "Come to my church." So I finally, to get them off my back, I said, "Okay, so tell me about your church." "Well, it's got drums and guitars." What church has drums and guitars? Like, are you serious? And then, "Tell me more." "Well, what is the minister? What does he look like? Who is he?" "The minister, well, he's a pastor. He preaches from a Bible." "What? You preach from a Bible? You got guitars, you got drums?" He goes, "Yeah, and there's young people. It's cool. You'd like it, Mike." And I said, "That doesn't sound like a church to me. That sounds like a cult." And he says, "No, it's not a cult. It's a church. You got to come." And finally, I knew I had nothing better, and I'd give it one last shot and get them off my back and just keep on
Mm.
going with the path that I'm on. And I walk into that cafeteria converted to a church. I see the overhead projector, people clapping in unison. This is like a non-Christian mind walking into a Christian venue.
Yeah. Yeah.
People are clapping in unison. Overhead projector with worship words on it. I can't even, never said those words in my life.
Yeah.
And I was a big karaoke singer, believe it or not, that in my younger days, to drown my sorrows, I would go to the karaoke, or karaoke as we call it in Hawaii. I think it's the right way. Karaoke. Went to the karaoke bars, and where back in the day when you had a big lanyard binder and
Yep.
pick a song,
You pick a
go up to
song,
the
you open it up,
DJ,
and you go down. Yeah. I
yeah, give
bend.
them your
I
number,
have bend.
pay the dollar,
Yeah.
and I would sing. People would give me the dollar to sing for them, and I would sing Unchained Melody. I would
Oh.
sing Al Green, Let's Stay Together. I would sing all these different songs,
Oh,
and then
really?
when I walk in, yeah, and
Well,
when
Mike, when I did mine, Mike, I was always my two things. Okay, this tells you. Um, Lady in Red, Krista Berg,
oh yes,
and Ready and Crazy for You, Madonna. Those are my two kind of
oh,
like my two songs that
oh,
I would pull out when it was like I had to go in and do the karaoke. I'm not saying
ah,
that the way same you do, but it was
I got
always
the
those
words
two
for all those
songs.
songs.
Or
Trying
or
hard to
Forever
control
Young.
my heart. Sorry.
Yeah, and Forever Young, Alphaville. Those were the three. Forever Young, I would be Forever Young, Alphaville. Crazy for You,
Uh,
Madonna, and Christopher, Lady in Red.
oh, come on.
My three go tos. Yeah.
Oh,
Sorry,
my
I just
sister
said
from
that. I'm like
this is my sister from another mister. I can tell. I can tell.
Everybody has their song, your go to in karaoke. Anyway, sorry, I didn't
Absolutely.
mean to.
Absolutely.
It started coming back to me. Yeah.
That's good. I like
Yeah.
this. And so so I walk into the service and I'm super nervous and they take Courtney one way, they take me the other way.
Mhm.
Someone sits me in the second row. I'm like, who sits the new guy in the second row? And I'm sitting in the second row and I'm looking at these overhead projector words and they're flipping them. And you know what they look like to the non-Christian mind? They look like love songs or a Lionel Richie love ballad to Jesus.
Hmm.
That's how I received it. And at that moment, they had me at probably song two, and I'm in there. Don't know what to do with my hands. But people, their hands are raised. I think they're Jesus freaks. I don't know how to receive this, but God is doing something. And He starts ministering to me. By the end of that service, I don't even know what pastor preached. All I know is I gave my life to the Lord that day. I'm
Wow.
21 years old. I walk in with this heavy heart. I walk out with hope. I walk out with maybe there's a miracle. But I walk out
Mhm.
with maybe my external circumstances did not change, but God changed me at that moment as I articulate my past. And as I began to see that I walked out of that room, I knew that God was with me for the very first time. All of this training that I had in religion and catechism now starts to converge. And now I start to realize, wow, all that my mom and dad brought me up with, now it makes sense. Was all here. I could memorize it. I could repeat it. But now all of a sudden it went to here.
Mhm.
And then my life is not going to be the same. Now I waited and I prayed and I wanted a miracle. And by then I got a great job at American Airlines and it, which made it probably more difficult because of the flight benefits and me staying in Hawaii and her trying to move on with her life. And I waited for 3 years. And in that 3 year wait, God was changing me. And in that 3 year wait, I'm waiting for a miracle. But in that 3 years, Melinda, I was single, but I was a single father, but I was still faithful. I wore my ring. I did
Mhm.
not date, and I was single, and I was celibate, and I was waiting. When the writing was on the wall that it wasn't going to happen, which was probably the saddest point, was when I realized it's not going to happen. It's not. It's not.
Mhm.
I've done everything. I would do everything. I would do anything. But when I realized that the writing was definitely on the wall, it was at that point where I said, okay, I got to take care of Courtney. It's triage time again. And so I'm going to be married to Jesus for one more year because I need healing. I need wholeness. I need to get some more work, more therapy, counseling,
Yeah.
more connect group, more community, more Bible, more prayer, and work hard and just hustle, work hard. And by then, I'm a salesman selling bottled water, 5 gallons. I'm
The
working a
Fiji
job.
water. The Fiji water.
No,
No.
I'm selling. It was called Menehune water,
Oh,
and
sorry, because
yeah,
I thought
yeah,
Fiji.
yeah, this big 5 gallon buck, the 5 gallon
Yeah,
type.
yeah, yeah.
And I'd sell that to homes and people would buy them. If you buy two, I give you three for free. Rent the cooler,
Mhm.
that deal. And then I'm working as a valet at night where my friends help me to
Wow.
find Jesus. And in that time of just being married to Jesus for one more year, and at the end of that one year, I said, okay, I need a wife. My daughter needs a mother, and I cannot go looking to the old places, and I can't go creeping at church. So Lord, if you could bring her to me, you have to reveal her to me. I know what I want. And I heard a pastor named Jack Hayford, who's still alive to this day, and who's become a good friend and a distant mentor now because I've lost touch with him over COVID. But Pastor Jack Hayford would say, pray specifically. But I was like, well, who am I to ask anything specifically for God? I'm just grateful to have what I have. He says, no, just pray specifically and ask God. So I prayed specifically, Melinda. I said, Lord, and I'm not kidding, but this sounds funny, but I said, Lord, if I can ever get married again, can she be 5'7"? 5'7", because I didn't want short kids because I remember what it was like being short. So I don't want. If I got a son, he needs to be taller than I was. I'm 6 feet, but I need a taller son. I said 5'7". Secondly, can she be gorgeous Chinese? Gorgeous Chinese, because I'm attracted, and I think that we would make beautiful babies together. So she's got to be gorgeous Chinese. And then here's number three, Lord. She's got to love Jesus more than me, more than me. She's got to have a love for Jesus that is beyond my love for Jesus. And because if she loves Jesus, we'll make it through anything. We'll make it through anything.
Mhm.
And there she was. But within a few months, I went to
No.
a yes, I went to a young adults Christmas party. When Melinda, I didn't feel like a young adult. I felt like an old man in a
Well, because you were
26-year
a
old.
father, you were actually
Right,
like had experienced things that are way beyond the young adults had experienced, right? Those your peers,
totally,
for sure.
totally. My friends are talking about rims and stereos, and I'm thinking about babysitting and how am I
And
going to afford that?
whatever formula. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah,
Got it.
and so there she was at a young adults Christmas party that I went to. I got dragged to by my friends from church. You got to come. And I don't want to go. Okay, I go. And there she is. She's sitting at the table and the registration table. She's working for the church. I didn't realize it. And I might have seen her one time, but I didn't take a second look because of my circumstance.
Hmm.
And there she was. And I said, I can't tell if she's Chinese. I can't tell if she's Korean. I can't tell if she's Japanese. She's close enough. I'll take it. And and we made friends that night, and then we talked, and we group ate at a equivalent of Denny's in Hawaii. And she called me the next day, and there was no caller screening. There was no caller ID. There was just just one of those phones where you pick it up and surprise who's on the other line, and it was her. And she asked me
Wow.
out, and I was like, wow, these girls move fast. And thank God she did,
Mike,
though.
for all the other people, it's like, can that actually happen? Because there's a ton of single people out there going, it's not everybody's story, but people are like, can you actually kind of like ask God for, your partner, for your, you know,
Right.
spouse, your future spouse, and that's an interesting question because I think for some people it's worked, and there's others who are like, I've been praying this for years, and it seems like it's not happening.
I totally understand. I tell people, young adults in my church, I said, you got to know what you want first, and you have to be patient, and you have to,
Mm.
because I think we spend so much time praying about where we want to work and where we want to live, rather than who we want to spend the rest of our lives with. And so I would pray specifically. I would encourage anybody, pray specifically, but be open to what God has, because
Mm.
you never know what He has for you. And so Lisa and I have been married for 28 years. We just celebrated it this past month, and
Congratulations.
28
Amazing.
years. Praise
Wow.
the Lord.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
amazing. That's amazing. Mike, back to the story. I find that this is really important because I don't want to lose sight of this part of your story.
Okay.
Because I get this too, because it's part of my story. Just about the friends that were relentless and were for you.
Hmm.
And because I've been thinking a lot about that because, uh, just talking actually to our associate producer Becca before our interview, and how we've made our faith uh, and our life very individualistic. It's about me, and I could either do it on my own, or I don't need other people, or
Right.
that. But we need one another, and I want to like reiterate it again to our viewers and listeners. Like, we need actually one another to help one another in this journey. We can't do life alone, and so I'm just really thankful for your friends who didn't give up on you, but also like were annoying and said, "No, you've got to come to church." Do you know what I mean? Like, I wanted to speak into a little bit about that because
Yeah.
I'm really big on that. I find that there's way more individualism, and kind of like, I can do it. I don't need help. That kind of thing.
Hmm.
Let's talk about that just
Hmm.
for a little bit, about the importance of community and friends, and either receiving the friendship or actually being a good friend.
Right.
How important that is.
Absolutely. I love that, because if I look at different groups of friends that I had at that time, I had Brandon, and then I had Mark. And even though Mark didn't go to church, Mark was always checking in on me. And even though Brandon did go to church, and I worked with Brandon, and Ken, and to this day, I'm still friends with Ken and Brandon, and I've lost touch, a little bit of touch with Mark. And we show up, and he shows up to the gym and plays basketball.
Mhm.
Every now and then I see him. I was that friend in Mark chapter 2 that was the paralyzed man on the mat. And it took
Mhm.
4 guys to get me there.
Mhm.
And when I got to the house, and the house was packed, and everybody went there for different reasons. They wanted to hear Jesus. The rabbis were inside trying to stomp Jesus. They were trying to entrap him. Yet everybody packed the house for one different reason. But my friends came, and they knew that it would take maybe an unconventional way to get Mike to church, because of Mike's attitude, Mike's situation, and maybe we're going to do it a different way. And they did. And I'm grateful for them, because they loved me on my journey, even though at times I was unlovable. I
Mm-hmm.
was upset with the way things were going in my life, where they were headed. And so when they brought me, they didn't just leave me at the doorstep. They actually journeyed with me through the whole thing. And you don't have a 35-year or 30-year friendship like that, um, that doesn't leave an impact on you. Ken
Mm-hmm.
now lives in Boulder, Colorado, where he's crushing life. And then my friend Brandon works down at the docks, and he's doing amazing things down in Honolulu. And we still have this connection. And if they had left me alone to my own self, I know this for sure. Courtney kept me alive.
Mm-hmm.
Courtney kept me from doing some crazy things because I knew that this little girl needed me. Even though I was at times during that 21-year-old to 23-year phase, probably self-destructive, I could have been. Um, and so because of them, I did not take my life. Because of them, I grew in my relationship with Christ because they introduced me to him. And there are people right now in our lives that all they need is a text. All they need is a checkup. All
Mm-hmm.
they need is a call. And sometimes we forget because people right now we're more isolated than ever before
Yeah.
and individualistic than we've ever been before because of
Mm-hmm.
what's happened. But I think those people are the ones that we pick up the phone and we reach out to people because they need us now more than ever before. And I'm so
Mm-hmm.
grateful for my friends and what they did for me. And
Amazing.
now I'm that friend. To this day, I'm still texting people at least 20 texts a week, just checking in. And I'm
Yeah.
busy, but I'm doing it because you never know. You just never know.
I know. I love that. I mean, and even through my own journey, Mike, it
Hmm.
was always my family was strong and supportive. I had a great, counselor and therapist, but my girlfriends were the ones who, when I went through depression, they're coming into the house, cleaning and throwing me into the
Wow.
shower. Or when I went through a very public divorce, when my husband
Hmm.
left, they were the ones who had my back and made sure that I was protected and safe and that I would continue on. So, I'm big on community, having your people, and being a good friend too. I mean, I've received great friendship. So,
Yeah.
part of my own life, and my husband and I now, it's all about building friendship and community for others. So I really love that part of your story. I think that's really beautiful, and especially for guys to really kind of rally like that.
Yeah.
It's really encouraging to hear. Really encouraging to hear. So 26 years, 26 years? No,
28.
28 years. Sorry, 28 years. Wow, it's amazing. I'm actually this Friday. Chris and I celebrate our 5 year in marriage and
Congratulations.
blended family. Thank you. So that's big. And Mike, another time I'll tell you about how I specifically prayed for not a Chris. Everything about Chris, I said, God, I don't want. And then Chris is
Mm.
everything I said I don't want, but it's everything that I need. So that was funny. That was a good trickster God. I mean, not a trickster, but funny, because I literally, my therapist had me write it all down and everything. I was like, I don't want a worship leader. I don't want a pastor. I don't want a guy with kids. I don't want a guy in skinny jeans. I literally like that. And then it's Chris. And yet Chris is perfect complement in every way to me as partners. So anyway, it's a great story. So,
Awesome.
okay, 28 years. How's Courtney? I'd love to know how's Courtney in all of this with you and
You know,
then new mom.
today Courtney is amazing.
Okay.
Today she's amazing. She's a mother of two beautiful children. They're beautiful, great husband. She works for a very reputable company. I think it's called Brand Live. She works for a company called Brand Live. She's one of the top
Mm,
executives there. I am so proud of her. Let's back up the story a little bit. And when we when Lisa and I got married, the blended family thing for us was hard, and
yeah.
it was hard because Courtney was still young and she had enough pain in her life from her mom not being there, and so Lisa stepped into a void of she probably had no idea what she was saying yes to because we were a package.
Hmm.
We were a package.
Yeah.
You can't separate me from Courtney and all of this. You're gonna have to take all of this, and we're a work in progress, and so is she. So is my wife Lisa,
Hmm.
and so I marry into a beautiful Chinese woman that is learning, beautiful, gorgeous, learning how to be affectionate to this Italian, Filipino, Hawaiian kid. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And where the Italian side is expressive, the Filipino side is expressive, the Hawaiian side is loving, and then I've got some sensitivities at the same time and a little bit of wounds, a lot.
Hmm.
Let's talk about a lot of wounds. And then we've got this girl that needs help.
Mm-hmm.
And so the first couple of years was rough. It was rough being a blended family. And then
Mm-hmm.
the teenage years got even harder,
Yeah.
harder. And can I get just let me just get real,
Yeah.
and
Please.
because we're on the other side of victory. So
Mm-hmm.
because we're on the other side of victory, I want to say that it was hard between her sophomore year and her senior year of high school, and it actually what got to a place that when she moved to Portland, Oregon, to go live with my mom and dad who had relocated. I don't share this on any other podcast, but I feel led to share it on this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
That there were times that I would go to bed not knowing where she was because you had no iPhones back then. You just, you had a Nokia.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd go to bed crying at night, and I'd wake up in the morning crying again and going, I don't know how to get a hold of her. I don't know how to get in touch with her. My parents didn't know where she was. She was running off with friends, and I forget how we reconnected. We made contact again, and the Lord told me that Courtney's road back to Jesus is going to be through me. It's going to be through me. Now, keep in mind, me and Lisa have two more daughters. We have Rebecca, and then we have our youngest, Karis. And so it's three girls, a house full of estrogen, and I'm the only I'm the only testosterone in the room. And the Lord tells me she's going to come back through you. So I had this mentality that I'd always keep the porch light on.
Mm-hmm.
So keeping the porch light on meant that here's your light to come home. And so for me to keep the porch light on was always connecting with her. Even though I don't know where you've been, I don't know what you're doing, I don't know who you're with. It might not have been as bad as I thought it was, but I love you. I love you. I'd always reach out to her. And then about 8 years ago, 8 years ago, something miraculous happened,
Mm-hmm.
and we reconnected stronger than ever before. And she is a chip off the old block. She's like me. She's a salesperson by heart. She's such a good mom. And so we fly back the kids uh, twice a year so they can stay around us. I wish they lived with us. I wish they lived in Hawaii, but they don't. They live in Portland. And so she's doing great. She's doing great. And I couldn't be prouder. I don't even worry about her anymore.
See, that's really encouraging. I mean, it's for any parent listening where you think this is it, and I think, again, it's so interesting because I was definitely, the prodigal daughter in my teen years, and I share this when I speak, Mike. When
Hmm.
I speak at women's conferences, my mom and dad had no idea where I was going or headed out. I was clubbing in Toronto, and I was just like, I was a mess. But they just said we got on our knees and prayed every night. We had no idea, but we said, God, you love Melinda more than we do.
Yeah.
You want her safe, and so protect her. And so many stories of God intervening in insane ways at the club, or with the taxi driver, or with a policeman saying something walking by, or a drunk party goer saying something, like, over and over. And I realized that God
Hmm.
loves his kids, and he will use any means to get their attention. And literally, years later when I talked to my parents, they were like, yeah, we had no idea, but we just prayed. And we prayed that if
Hmm.
we couldn't get to you, Melinda, somebody would. And those
Yeah.
somebody woulds did. Many
Yep.
signs along the way. And not conventional kind of church way. It wasn't like the pastor necessarily. Yeah, my pastors were, but random people got used to speak truth. So I love that
That's awesome.
commitment that you're saying, as far as you as a dad, to say, no matter what, I'm here. I'll always be here.
Yeah.
Porch Light is really
Yeah.
amazing because it's this commitment to stay true and present and there no matter what. That's a beautiful picture. It's a really beautiful
Thank
picture.
you.
Yeah,
Thank you. Yeah.
amazing.
I'm so thankful to God for what he did. Yeah.
I love that. So here we are. You're you get married. You're a sales guy, and what's forming in you, it seems, as I've been sort of reading about you, is sort of this leadership and really inspiring people, and especially with your new book, of excellence and leading well and integrity and strength, like a lot of these things. Let's talk about that. I know for our viewers and listeners here at See Hear Love, that's a big thing, like leading yourself
Hmm.
and others well, leading with humility, with integrity, um, leading teams. So I want to spend some time on that because I think I'll learn a
Okay.
lot from you, Mike, about that and talking within like this excellence. And I love how you've used the story of Solomon and the Queen of Sheba because I always love scripture stories to kind of bring in into some in leadership learning. So let's talk about a little bit about that. Maybe why now this book, these thoughts, and then
Hmm.
let's talk a little bit about it because I'd love to learn.
Okay. So I've always been intrigued by the story of King Solomon and the wisdom that God gave him because he asked for everything different, and God gave him what he didn't ask for and everything else to go along with that to boot. Um, but by the time the Queen of Sheba began to travel to Jerusalem, the country had been 20 years under Solomon's rule. Solomon had curated everything. Now, if we go back to First Kings, we remember that the city of Jerusalem, that gold was so plentiful, or silver was so plentiful that was like pebbles all over the stones on the pavement. And so when she gets there, she is in awe of everything she sees. She sees the way that his servants are carry themselves. She sees the food on his table. She comes out with 10 different things, observations that she gathers on this incredible trip. Now, keep in mind, Melinda, it would take probably 3 months for her to get from her kingdom in order to get to Solomon's with military escort in the front, all of the provisions, the food, all
Hmm.
the gifts and spices that she was bringing. I mean, it was a momentous task that she was doing to go see about everything that she'd heard about. She had to see it, she had to hear it, and she walked away loving it, right?
Hey,
So, come on.
Mike, nice. Come on.
so, so when she gets there, she is absolutely blown away. So we know
Mhm.
that game recognizes game. So what she saw from her kingdom, looking into his kingdom, to impress a queen of another country is something
Mm.
else. So when she sees this, I walk away thinking to myself, okay, I've preached these principles to my staff on excellence. Here's some things that I took out of it. But right about November of 2019, I think, 2020, I start writing, said, this has got to be a book. I'm launching a new Inspire Collective for people in business. This is going to be great. So I start writing this book. And then all of a sudden, it keeps dawning on me the more that I write that this is a site visit of grand proportions. This is like you taking your team or me taking my team or somebody taking a team to visit Elon Musk and see the SpaceX program, see how Teslas are built, and getting to pick Elon Musk's brain and see how he ticks and watch his whole operation and walk away. And you will be marked by that visit because you got to sit down with one of the wealthiest men on earth right now. The same way that the Queen of Sheba, if not even greater, the impact because of the city
Mhm.
of God and everything that he built, everything that he did, everything that he curated. I said, this has got to be a book. And so I started saying to my church, that doesn't just happen. Like this church, that doesn't just happen. That great business, that doesn't just happen. And so all of a sudden, the title, it was
Wow.
harder to name my book than name my daughters, to be honest with you. I had like 7, 8 different agonizing things about what do I call this book? So I started calling it That Doesn't Just Happen. I almost called it Build Like Solomon, See Like Sheba, but I don't think that would have flown for too long. But I liked it. It
Mhm.
was catchy. I want to build like Solomon. And I want to take it in like the Queen of Sheba.
Mhm.
But then I started calling it That Doesn't Just Happen. And so customer service, creative adaptation, culture curation. So when I went to a church in Australia for the very first time, which is some of the greatest churches in the world, I walked away going, wait, what is it from that church that I could bring back to Hawaii and emulate and creatively adapt into my cultural context in order to become the church that God wanted us to be? And I think it's the same thing for today. We look at great business models, we look at great leaders. What can we learn from them and bring into our own context and adapt that to who we are, to who God wants us to be?
Wow. That's powerful. And I think I like this word, you know, excellence. I like greatness. Like I think
Mm,
how excellence accelerates everything. And it's a good statement because here's the thing I'm finding that yeah, there are people that work with excellence and I see that all around me. But I also see people that just want to pump out content or do things and it's not excellent. It's work that's not 100% great.
yeah.
um, and I want to bring back because I think excellence is important. I think we need to kind of bring back that we do everything with excellence, with the best that
Hmm.
we can bring, the
Yeah.
best that we can do. But I just find that sometimes when I'm looking around in like society and culture, it's more about just producing, but not with excellence. Do you know what I mean? Does that
Yeah,
make
yeah,
sense?
100%. So, um, excellence is not perfection because we'll never attain that.
Right.
So I don't expect perfection out of my team or out of myself, but I'm sure gonna try. And so right now in the world of, oh, that's good enough,
Mm-hmm.
especially
Yeah.
in Hawaii where we're more laid back than most cultures in America, to be an excellent, to handle customer service with excellence, to be able to handle our communication internally on our staff and then externally with everybody that we work with, you have to have excellent communication. I think right now I've actually seen in where I live or even in my country in America, I've seen the customer service drop to a point of almost like, well, like this is what you get. It's almost entitlement, almost like,
Mm.
here, check the box, 10%, 15%, or 20% tip. And I'm like, wait, I walked up to the counter. And usually where I come from, an old school restaurant background where I worked in the restaurants, that you actually earned that 15% and you got blessed by 20% because you worked you worked your tail off in order
Mm-hmm.
to serve someone with an excellent experience.
Yeah.
But today it's expected. It's expected that you're just going to give me a 10, 15, or 20% tip where all I did was turn around. And I'm generous and I'm going to still give it. But also I've watched how it's dropped. I think that when we approach everything with excellence, I think people who have an excellent attitude, who
Mm-hmm.
have an excellent demeanor, those are the people that are going to be a cut above, and they're the ones that are going to get hired and promoted. And so when the world is going good enough, or this is what I have to offer, I think when I look at Daniel, right, Daniel in the Old Testament, Daniel had an excellent spirit, right? To be able to handle all that change in government, all that regime change that went on, and they were violent changes, that Daniel still held on to his integrity and still was able to serve 4 to 5 different kings
Mm.
during those transitions. If I look at it's the people who handle themselves with excellence and integrity that are going to get promoted, that they're going to get noticed, that they're going to get seen. Even though if man doesn't see you, God sees you. We live in a world where it's unfortunate, but it is the way that it is, that people judge a book by its cover. So you have one chance, not just to make a first impression, but a lasting impression. Although you and I, we all believe that God looks at my heart. He loves my heart more than my exterior or my appearance, but the world doesn't see it that way. And so when we are in the world but not of the world, we have to operate to a certain degree by the world's rules. But where we opt, well, we work by God's rules, but we also understand that we're working in a real world where people are actually judging us from the outside before they can get to know us from the inside. So when we handle ourselves like Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, like Esther, and like Caleb with an excellent spirit, people take notice. And even no matter what you do, where you are right now, that's I think accelerates everything.
Mm. How do you get that? I mean, is it like as a parent of teenagers? We have a 14 and 17-year-old. How do you start instilling that excellence and that integrity in them now? And then, so as a parent, but then as a leader, instilling that in your team as well. I know that it starts with you. So maybe start with parent because I think
Yeah.
that's one that I'm fascinated with. Because if you can do it at home, then they're going to go out and be that wherever they go, right? Wherever they
Okay. Yeah.
are.
So this is kind of a funny thing. So I have all girls, and my youngest is 16, and and I love my daughters, and so I'm like it's like this. I don't preach perfection. We tell them we have expectations, but don't put unmet expectations and unsaid expectations on yourself, because that's not coming from me and mom. We want you to know that we want you to do your best.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think that that was your best, then we're happy with that. But if you knew that you skated and you knew you could have done better, then you that's up to you. But we also know that I have self starters in my house. My youngest daughter, she's a self starter. She's 16. Never had to get her to do her homework. It was just maybe her demeanor, maybe the way that she just does her makeup, but she would just do that. And so I'm grateful for that. So she makes sure that she's got all her stuff together before she gets out of the house and heads to school. So I've also had it when Courtney And Courtney, my oldest, she was rebellious. She had purple hair, blue hair, and now that's in. Back then it wasn't. And she was skater girl, and her pants were too low, and she'd get written up and all that kind of stuff. And so I had the spectrum of daughters on what they thought their level of good enough or excellence was. So when it comes to academics, Lisa and I definitely instill that, and to the point where they can run on their own, and I'm grateful that Karis is at that. But on a funny note, there are times when Lisa, she doesn't. My wife is, take it. It is what it is. If you don't like it, don't worry about it. I'm not even bothered. So there are times that she'll go to the store, and my daughters will say, "Wait, you going to the store, to the grocery store, looking like that?" And she will be like, "Well, I don't really care. I'm just going in and out." So it's funny because on one sense, my daughters and myself, we wouldn't leave the house looking a certain way. But my wife, she has no problem going to the store and coming back looking the way that she's comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that helps or anything, but when it comes to raising the kids, when it comes to our own household, we do have an internal standard. But then there are times when we really are fine with what we look like and who we are if we're just running to the corner grocery store.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when it comes to my staff, it's easier to instill excellence in my staff, honestly, than it is to be in my home, because I don't live with them. I don't live with them 24/7. My daughters live with me 24/7.
Mm-hmm.
And so we all hold each other to a standard of excellence within our team. And within our team, it's when we have this saying, circle back, follow through, close the loop on our communication. Did you circle back? Did you follow through? Did you close the loop on that communication? Because we know that communication is so critical, and trust is built on communication. When it comes to the appearance of our buildings, the appearance of things in the lobby, we want to handle everything with a culture of excellence. But we also want to keep the authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to lose
Good.
that. I guess our authentic self is me and Lisa getting out of the house and looking, who cares? Who
Mm-hmm.
cares? We're just going to the store. That's our authentic self. But we also realize that you can still have authenticity in the journey of trying to achieve that level of excellence that you want. And our staff gets that. And there are times that we always have to be reminded, and even myself, I have to be reminded on that has to be, we have to give our best
Mm-hmm.
effort and put that forward, because you never know whose life it's going to touch.
Yeah.
You never know who's going to be impacted.
Yeah. Mike, I like that. I think that it was important to hear about excellence and authenticity because, authentic doesn't mean we just sort of go with it and no one cares and we're our authentic self. This is who we are, and we don't try.
Right,
We don't care. We
right,
don't put in the work. But on the other hand, with excellence, you don't want it to be where it's all just a beautiful facade
right.
without kind of like the actual like meat, or the actual kind of meaning behind it. That it looks pretty, but there's nothing. It's like a shell. So like I
Yeah,
love that both it's both, and the authenticity and excellence go hand in hand as we lead teams, as we present the work that we do, and even in even in ministry work and what we do. Mike, what would you say to this? I mean, if you were a young woman is saying, okay, I want to lead. I want to lead well. I want to lead with excellence. I just want to be a really great leader, like following Jesus,
mm-hmm,
trying not to be too much of a people pleaser,
mm-hmm.
trying to like stay true to the mission and vision that God has called me. What would you say maybe your top 2 or 3, encouragements or tips to really encourage her as she's maybe beginning the journey of leadership? What would you say to her?
Yeah, I would say, to aspire to leadership is a great thing. And you're probably more of a leader than you realize that you are.
Hmm.
And it's based upon the people that follow you. John Maxwell, one of my mentors, says, of course, he says leadership is influence. I agree, but I'd like to take it another step further. I think leadership is all about your heart. And so for the young lady that's starting off, um, I know the complexities because I have young ladies in my house. I know what it's like to worry about what other people think about you, what they say about you, what your appearance is, and everybody's got a filter on their phone, and everybody's a model today. And I
Hmm.
want you to realize that God is, even though you want to work things out with excellence, but I want you to know that God cares. He truly does. He cares about excellence, but he really cares more about you, that he loves
Hmm.
your heart. He wants to see you on this journey. And on this journey of leadership, what you're going to discover is it gets difficult. There are going to be times that you can't please everybody. There are going to be times that you said too much or you didn't say enough. There's times that you were, there are going to be times where you're going to be um, hated on because of how great you are, because you're gonna move ahead in a world where people are pulling each other down and are louder than ever before. Don't let those voices stop you from becoming the person that God called you to be. So number one, it's your heart.
Mm.
Your heart is the most important thing. Your heart, it can be deceitful, like my heart can be deceitful according to scripture, but also your, when you clean your heart, when you get your heart cleansed, when you go through all that healing that we all need, then God can continue to use you for even greater things than ever before. Man looks at the outer appearance, but God looks at the heart. This is the one where it fits perfectly.
Mm.
The second thing is, I'd say read voraciously. Podcasts, awesome, but get a diet of books. Get great books. Books impacted my life at 21. Before I became a senior pastor of a church, a youth pastor before that, I was a voracious reader. I've heard it said that readers are leaders and leaders are readers. And if you ain't reading, you're probably not leading. So find yourself, See, Hear, Love. Go read that book. Go read books like Perfectly You by my wife and overcoming her insecurities that we all have. I think men should read it. Go get books like I read, like Melinda, I read Tough Times Never Last, but Tough People Do by the great Dr. Robert Schuller. That book impacted me. The Greatest Salesman in the World by Og Mandino had nothing to do with sales, but everything to do with God doing something in your life. Books will shape you. Keep reading. Read a chapter a night. Number one, your heart. Number two, books. And third thing I would say is have fun.
Mm-hmm.
Have fun and be willing to stay flexible because you never know. Like I thought I was going to be in business and a millionaire. I thought I was going to be running a corporation or a sales company or commercial real estate. Little did I know that while I was meeting with Pastor Ralph Moore, while he was sussing me out before I got married to Lisa and taking me out to breakfast because she was on staff, that he was actually discipling me at McDonald's every Wednesday morning at 8 a.m. And I thought he was just checking me out to see if I was legit. But he actually had other plans for my life to become a pastor one day. And I was like, me? I want you to realize that no eye has seen, no ear has heard, no mind can comprehend. My favorite verse, 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 9. No eye has seen, no ear has heard, no mind can comprehend the things that God has for those of them who love him.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? My translation is, let God blow your mind. Let him blow your mind. Let him show you things that you've never seen before. Work on the heart. Keep that
Mm-hmm.
clean at all times. Read books like nobody's business. And let God blow your mind.
Amazing. Mike Kai, thank you so much. Everybody needs to pick up your latest book, That Doesn't Just Happen, How Excellence Accelerates Everything. We could talk for hours. There's so much more I want to chat with you about blended family and girls and having, all kinds of things. So really appreciate you taking the time out. And maybe I'll meet you at some karaoke thing, singing our songs.
Maybe you'll speak in a conference in Hawaii one day that my wife has called Arise, and we can introduce the two of you.
Yeah,
And she's got some blended stories to tell. Uh,
I would love
and
that. I
yeah,
would love to come out when things, open up here on our side. It would be so great, and maybe we can have you guys come on up to Canada because it's a great country and so many wonderful, amazing people up here. So it'd be great to host you guys here too sometime. So, Mike, thank you
thank you,
again,
Melinda.
and yeah, we'll be in touch for sure. So thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Melinda. It's been a pleasure. God bless you.